So I am trying to find a balance right now between having this drive to break out of my confines and also giving myself time and space to rest and recover and not push myself too hard. Because I find when I push myself too hard, it kind of pushes things away too. It doesn't keep me in the right kind of alignment. But at the same time, having like a fiery drive also is a good thing, and it does give me power, and it does create opportunities. So it's sort of I guess a balancing act. So this is me just processing this out loud, seeing what comes up around that. Um, I think maybe it still comes back to whether I come from fear or trust. If I have this fiery passion in me for something, am I trusting in it, or am I slipping into a fear-based mentality where I need to control things and push and do things to get what I want? Or am I coming from a trust-based mentality where it's more of a focus on the internal versus the external? And it's more trust that whatever happens is what's supposed to happen, that as long as I follow inspired action and the trail of breadcrumbs, that it's going to take me where I need to go, and to not lose faith in that. Because the fiery energy is there. I don't think it's really there ultimately to lead me to the goal. I think it's ultimately there to help me transform in the process. And that should be where the energy is directed. And how do I transform on this journey? How do I look into myself more clearly? How do I change as a person? And maybe ultimately it leads me to a place where I get to choose, do I die to my old self and be reborn, or do I keep staying the same person? Yeah, and Jed McKenna says that it's a single event, the death and rebirth process. It's like a single event that happens. There can be a build up to it, like the pressure building, questioning, existential dread, all that stuff building up to a pressure point, and then there's sort of a single event where you just you fully die to yourself, and you drop the facade, drop the routines, drop the life that you had built up for yourself, and you move into the unknown. Yeah, I guess in the tarot that would be the Fool, but and then once you pass that threshold, even though it's a single event, it's like you've entered a new world. And so there can be still growth and expansion in this new world, but now it's no longer ego based. It's more based on your direct relationship with the universe, and it's based on your authentic desires and trust. And the growth is more about deepening that relationship with the universe, deepening that trust, I guess. So yeah, I guess I'm just asking myself, like, where am I in that process, and how am I halting myself? Is there, am I preventing my progress, or am I aiding it along if I feel like there's this dip? I think there's a temptation. The thing that kind of scares me is I think there is a temptation that does come up when you're in sort of a recuperation phase, where I think that's when the old life has its best attempt at sucking you back in. So I think in some ways you almost have to be more vigilant. So I'm just noticing myself right now because I want to, observe what's actually going on. And what concerns me is I do feel this old energy already that feels immature. It's tied in with this victim mentality, and it's tied in with a sense of control, needing control. It's tied in with a clinginess and a desperation. So it is fear-based. And it almost comes across to me as whiny. And the whininess is there because it wants to show itself, it wants to prove itself that it's better, but it's still holding on to something. It's like, it's not about this part of myself being better. It's about like this part of myself has to like let go. And then the rest of me can take over, sort of, I guess. This part of myself isn't supposed to like be better or more mature. It's not supposed to be in charge. And it's trying to take the reins. It's like, no, dude. And it takes the reins when it's desperate, and when the rest of me, I think, feels weakened or vulnerable or exhausted. So maybe I'm answering my own question. Like, the more I can take care of myself, get the rest I need, stop stressing about what's out there, the more these, I guess, stronger parts of myself can take the reins. I'm not even sure if that's it. Because I'm not even sure, it's not even like, I don't know if it's even like any part of myself is supposed to take the reins. It's just that, it's just like a complete surrender that maybe is supposed to happen. But when I'm in sort of a weakened state, then it seems like the whiny, childlike parts of me, the desperate parts, do strive to take those reins. So then the question is, can I heal them so they just stop doing that and relax? Or is it just a matter of like building the rest of me back up? So those parts of me don't have to feel weak. In a way, maybe it's like reparenting, but maybe in less of a direct sense. Just the sense that there's a more mature side of me that is grounded and stable, and empowered, sort of gives permission for these other parts of me to like relax. Maybe that's it. But then these more quote-unquote mature aspects then also have to not take the reins. I think there has to be a trust there. I think the purpose of those parts is to have a clear direction, to have a clear intent. It's like they have a clear intent. There's an ability to overcome challenges, to face challenges and face fears, and there's an ability to take care of myself. There's a decisiveness, there's a following what feels right, and there's a not following what doesn't feel right. Yeah, there's mastery, development of skills. There's service, being able to help others. So it's like those are sort of the roles of these more mature parts of myself. And then I guess the younger parts of myself can then just like be free to be childlike and innocent and just like playful. I guess. Or maybe there's something else there that I'm not seeing. But then there's a desire, a questioning of like, is it still holding on to the ego to even have those more mature parts of myself like step in? Because the ego isn't just the childlike parts. I think the ego can also be these more mature parts. Potentially. I'm still working this out. Basically, it's a moving away from the need for approval, the need for validation, giving away my independence of thought. It's a moving away from cowardice, giving into fear. It's a moving away from self-consciousness. And it's a shift into greater freedom, greater aliveness, trust, ease, flow. Appreciation. Appreciation. Yeah, appreciation. That's hitting for me for some reason. It's almost like I want to discount it. And there's pain there. It almost feels like the pain is blocking the appreciation. Not fully, but it's definitely sort of in the way. Makes me feel kind of sick. For some reason, what's coming up too is taking on other people's energy and becoming more like them in ways that I don't want to be. It's for some reason, there's this image, this sense of other people's energy sucking me back down into, or keeping me in place, yet sucking me back down into the familiar zone. So I'm less able to break out of the comfort area. So I'm less able to break out of the loop. There's a need for independence. Like to not let all that influence me. Their thoughts and opinions and energy and personalities, that they can keep them. It's not for me to dictate about that. It's just, I don't have to take it on. And there's a need to be free of that. I don't know how that's related to appreciation or lack thereof. Okay, I guess I do know how. There's just a lot of pain in my heart. It's like I was appreciative, and it's not like I have to appreciate everything that happens. It's not about that. That's kind of a false appreciation. You just appreciate, like, you feel like you have to appreciate anything and everything just because it's there. You shouldn't force yourself. It should be more like authentic, like paying attention to what you're already appreciative of, and I guess deepening into it, not taking it for granted. And then that can kind of expand. It's more about paying attention. It's like authentic appreciation is more about paying attention. There's just this pain in my heart. Feels like it's making it harder for me to appreciate some things. And there is a strong desire there for breaking out of the mold I've been in, the cave, the loop. And it feels like there's a sense of loss for some of those things in situations and people that felt like they were pulling me out of the loop. And if not pulling me directly, at least somehow supporting me, at least energetically or in some key ways, in moving out of the loop. I was still doing the work, but it's like I had a boost because of that. And it feels like I don't have that boost anymore. But maybe there's a need for appreciation, for maybe there is something that I can be appreciative for that does support me with that. Maybe it's, time for me to appreciate that, focus on that, not focus on the loss or the lack. Yeah, I have to take care of myself. I don't need like a frantic energy that is trying to. It's like it kept getting directed out there. It kept getting like sucked back into out there, and it just needs to stay focused on in here. I get why it was directed out there. It saw the two things as connected, and they are connected, but the power comes from in here. That's what's important. I shift what's in here. Whatever is supposed to shift out there is what follows suit. That's how it works. So it's just that there's still stuff in here that I just need to look at, work out. So I don't have to worry about what's out there. And then there can be a trust, and if I do that, then really what my heart desires will manifest out there in the form it's supposed to take. And just to trust that that's going to happen when it's supposed to happen. It's what happened earlier this year. It can happen again. It's not giving up. It's not giving up. It's just shifting my focus. There is some resistance to that. Because it still gave me firepower. I still had this energy. I think there is some part of me, I think it's this masculine side of me that just wants expression, that likes to have something it can I think it likes to be able to push through things. It likes to be able to test itself, to test its strength. It likes to have this fiery energy that just keeps it burning, or it almost likes the chase. It almost likes, I think it does like the chase and the adventure. It's not sustainable, but it, I think, likes that. And maybe it just needs other outlets for that. Like maybe sports or competition or something. I have ideas for it. And maybe I just need to give myself permission to give it those outlets. And there is a drive to awaken. But I think for me, there's a disconnection with think sometimes awakening is still, for me, seen as an escape. It's like the real thing about bypassing is it's about purity of intent, I think. Because if you're trying to do something because you're really wanting to do something else, then you're not in alignment. So if I'm trying to awaken because really I want to get something through that, I want something else, then I'm not being honest with myself. I'm actually splitting my energy. So the thing to do would just to be honest with myself and ask, like, what is it that I'm actually really wanting? And why do I want that? To kind of go back there. And then figure out, okay, well, how can I best direct myself then? And it might be that if there is some authentic desire to awaken for me to question more where that comes from. Maybe there's still a piece that's not clicking. Like there's still I guess to go back full circle, a draw towards the old. Because for me with awakening, the best way I've been able to understand it is there are two types of awakening. There's awakening within the dream, which is becoming a conscious co-creator. And then there's awakening outside the dream, which is full enlightenment, which is being dead without dropping the body. It's not the death and rebirth process. It's like there's no you, and it's just seen through completely. That's not where I'm at yet. That's not what I'm looking for right now. That's not my process right now. For me right now, it's more a draw towards awakening within the dream, being a conscious co-creator, and sort of integrating awareness with the environment, I guess you could say. So which in some ways it feels like I've been moving in that direction, but it doesn't feel like I've had the full death rebirth yet. Or there's some kind of finish line, some kind of threshold I haven't quite crossed yet. And I think I just need to go back and understand what's going on there with like I think a lot of it just comes down to fear. I'm still holding on to a lot of fear. The other side of this too is I give a lot of thanks to Jed because he says things in such a clear way, I think, that really hit home for me, that really, I feel like there's an energetic transmission in his writing that I get each time I read it. And it's a slow drip for me, but it's definitely there. And I feel a lot of the blessings that came early this year were partly because of what I was getting from those books. Not the full enlightenment stuff, but more the integrated living kind of stuff. And yeah, things just started to flow a lot better. And there were multiple factors involved, but that was definitely one of them. And so there's a lot of gratitude for Jed and the way he speaks and the way he conveys his information. And I think there's also noticing that I don't want to be tied ball and chain to Jed. That's still one perspective, and I still need to think for myself. I still need to look at my direct experience, think for myself, and unpack things. So he presents this idea of human adulthood or the integrated state, and it makes sense to me. And the things I had started to experience were seeming to align with that description. But then he talks about that part of the death rebirth process is having surrender, letting your ego take its hands off the reins of life, letting go of the tiller, he calls it, and just trusting and not making anything right or wrong. Well, you follow an intuitive sense of rightness and wrongness, and you pay attention to what the universe seems to be pointing you towards. But you also recognize that there's no inherent thing as right and wrong in an absolute sense. There's no absolute good and evil. And when something seems to go wrong in your life, you don't make it wrong. You just consider either this is trying to teach me something, or it's a blessing in disguise. And either way, it's a blessing in disguise if it's trying to teach you something. Which for him, I think he would consider that it's showing you a blind spot in your own ego to clear up. And he says the more you clear up the ego, it's like having a lens that light shines through, and your ego clouds the lens. So the light that comes through is like distorted and murky. But the more you clear the lens, the more the light can shine through clearly, and the more that reality looks beautiful. So, and I've heard that from other people too. So, he said it's really just ego that gets in the way of things being in flow for you. And ego is ultimately the fear of nothingness, the fear of meaninglessness. It's the need to control. And something that had come up for me a few days ago is well, he talks about this idea. I mean, a lot of people talk about it, that that there's no separation, but the way he talks about it is really interesting, because he talks about this relationship with the universe, where you set an intention and the universe responds. This is my experience of it. To me, it feels like a dance, or it feels like a conversation. I set an intention or I take an action, the universe responds, and it goes back and forth. Then I respond to it responds to me, I respond to it, and that creates a flow or a rhythm or a vortex. That's when things feel in alignment. And in a sense, that's always happening, but we call it alignment when it's happening the way that feels right to us, I guess. That leads to more expansion instead of contraction or resistance. So it feels like there's this me, this self that sets the intentions, that has these desires, that does the actions, and then there's this greater intelligence, the universe, that responds to that manifests things, that creates a sense of flow. And or maybe it's like we create the sense of flow together. So it almost feels like there is a separation in that way, like me and the bigger reality. But and in some ways, Jed pitches it that way when he first talks about this. When he says, to become a true human adult, you have to surrender. You have to let thy will be done, the greater will be done. But then he clarifies that, and he says, there is really, from his direct experience, he says, there is no separation between me and the universe. It's just this I, thou entity. It's one entity. He calls it a new entity, a new perceived entity, an I, thou entity. And he says, in the Neville Goddard writings and community, he said the same thing, that your true authentic desires are the same as the universe's desires for you. They're one and the same. It's only ego, fear-based desires that are out of alignment. Which then begs the question, well, if it's true that there's no separation, and it's true that your authentic desires are the same as the universe's, well, then what's going on? So when that dance is happening, or really when anything happens, and it's true that I'm not separate from the universe, I am part of it. We're connected. We're not just connected, we're one and the same thing. Then it's hard to even put it into words, but it just it hits something in a deep place. And it hit me too when I was looking at one of the tarot cards the other day, the Four of Cups, where this guy is sitting in almost a meditative pose, but with his arms crossed. And there's a cup popping out of thin air, being handed to him by some divine entity, by an disembodied hand. And it kind of hit me, that being a representation, I don't know if it's intentionally so, but the metaphor is apt, that being a representation for like this I-thou relationship, this the universe being sort of our higher self, our greater self intelligence, that is always giving us what we need, whether we think we need it or not, and is always giving us opportunity, but also inviting us outside of our confinement. So it's like no challenge is really wrong, no thing that goes bad is really wrong. It's all meant to be a catalyst. It's in a way always a gift. Which I guess is easy for me to say right now in a bathtub, but yeah, it's something I'm still sitting with. Because then, there's the sense that I can still mess it up and get it wrong, and I can resist and thwart what the universe is trying to do. I think there's a lot of pain and guilt over that, because there's a recognition that the universe was trying to give me everything I wanted this year, and I just kind of kept cock blocking it and resisting. I wasn't growing with what was coming my way. I was trying to I was trying to, so I have to give myself some credit, but ego still kept getting in the way. Ultimately, it was a fight with my own ego, I guess. And it kept pushing the things the universe was giving me away. And there's a lot of regret and pain around that. More than I can really say right now, because it does go deep, and I'll just say my patience felt really worn thin when I felt like I did everything I could to not let that happen, but it still happened. But I think that's where I'm at with it, actually. That I had such a strong desire to not let my ego get in the way and to not self-sabotage, but I still did. In a big way. I still did. And it's crazy. It's like out of this world that could fucking happen. And so that's where I'm at with it. How fucking deceptive my ego can be. That I was thinking I was starting to rise above it, but actually not. It's not really that simple. It's more, I was in this constant battle with it, but it still kept winning. And so that's where I'm at with the whole thing. So there is a need for me to understand my ego better and to not let this happen again. Yeah. But I still have to forgive myself truly and let go of this charge I have around all these mistakes that I made. And somehow have faith and trust that, as intelligent as the universe is, that there's still probably a reason for even this. It's a hard pill to swallow. All right. I think that's all I got for right now. Thanks for listening.